Hello, everyone. I'm Andrea Tanteros, along with Kimberly Guilfoyle, Bob Beckel, David Webb, and Greg Gutfeld. It's 5 o'clock in New York City, and this is The Five. Well, it's day 14 of the government shutdown, and this week brings yet another deadline, the one over the debt ceiling. And the president is talking about a potential default, and he's blaming Republicans.
Not only is it untenable for us to continue this shutdown this week, if we don't start making some real progress both in the House and the Senate, and if Republicans aren't willing to set aside some of their partisan concerns in order to do what's right for the country, we stand a good chance of defaulting.
Well, President Obama and Vice President Biden were supposed to meet at 3 p.m. with the four key congressional leaders, Reid, McConnell, Pelosi, and Boehner, but that meeting was abruptly postponed. Now, we're also getting word that Mitch McConnell will present a potential plan to Senate Republicans tomorrow morning. Ed Henry is following it all from Washington. He joins us now from the White House. Ed?
Andrea, good to see you. The bottom line is that that's actually good news that the meeting here at the White House was delayed. Normally you would say, wait a second, is this thing falling apart? Is the president not ready to meet with Democratic and Republican leaders? In this time, we're hearing White House aides signal to the Senate leaders, if you need more time, take it. And it appears that they at least have a framework, we're told, from sources in both the Democratic and Republican Party in the Senate to move all of this forward. It would basically extend the debt ceiling until February 15th. They would reopen the government until January 15th. And then they would have broader budget talks that would sort of have an expiration date of December 15th to try to have some other bigger budget deal before the holidays. The key here is it may be able to get through the Senate, but can it still get through the House? You have conservatives who are saying, look, there's no changes here, really substantive changes to the president's health care law. There's not substantive spending cuts. The pushback on that is going to be that, look, this will happen in these broader budget talks in late November, early December. But obviously, we've heard that before with the super committee of a couple of years ago that ended up not following through on deficit reduction and whatnot. So that conversation is going to continue. As you say, Senator McConnell now will be briefing Senate Republicans early tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. But look, the clock is ticking. We're just 3 days away from the government not being able to have the power to borrow more money. And in the Senate, as you know, it could take 3 or 4 days to push all of this through. So they're going to have to they're going to have to get moving quickly. And we anticipate, if not a late night meeting today, we'd anticipate a meeting here at the White House tomorrow to try to seal all of this, Andrea.
Well, thanks, Ed. By the way, there's some rumors floating around the internet about you that you stormed out of the White House briefing on Friday because allegedly you were mad at Jay Carney. But that's not really true, is it?
Not really true. Look, the bottom line is what I was mad at is that I wasn't getting called on, and Jay Carney was clearly ignoring me for some 40 minutes. But the real story is that at about 1 p.m. he was supposed to be briefing on Friday, and he pushed it back several times because, look, the negotiations were going on. That's fine. This happens. But it was not until about 4 p.m. that he actually had that briefing. And the reason why I was walking out, I see that video, I was walking out is because after 40 minutes of not being called on, I had people telling me I had to get out here on the North Lawn to do a hit for the Five. So if these bloggers who were attacking me actually went and checked the videotape, they would see that a few minutes after I walked out, I came out here to talk to you guys. That's a matter of record. And I was also trying to finish my script for 6 o'clock for Brett Baer. Otherwise, I would have had Brett mad at me. I would have had you guys and Porter Berry, your executive producer, mad at me, and that's the last thing I want.
I heard the rumor was you had to go to the little boy's room, and you were embarrassed.
There we go.
Not true. False.
Don't answer that.
Shockingly, Greg, something you said is false.
Ed, it didn't look like you were storming out on that video, and that's smart, though. You don't want the Five mad at you, but we're happy to be your alibi.
I do not. You know, Jay Carney can be mad at me. I do not want the Five mad at me.
You're darn right. You're darn right. Thanks, Ed.
Take care.
All right, so Bob, you have been following these behind-the-scenes negotiations. How close do you think they are at getting a deal?
Well, I think they've got a deal. I think it's just turning into legislative language that works. The question now is, I mean, this thing came off of Obamacare by the end of last week and went back onto spending, particularly on the sequestration numbers. This deal now is, in some ways, I mean, Collins' framework, but the difference is that they moved the CR up and they moved the debt ceiling back. I think it makes sense all the way around. The thing that scared everybody last night was that the futures market for stocks had fallen something like 300 or 400 points. It scared the hell out of people. They've got a deal. The real question now, as Ed pointed out, or if Ed didn't point it out, he should have pointed it out.
You were listening.
Is Boehner going to be able to do what he's going to have to do, which is to take votes from Democrats, combined with 20 or 30 Republicans to pass this thing? That for Boehner is a very difficult political call, but I think from Boehner's standpoint, I don't think he's got any option.
So that it does fall on Boehner's shoulders now, because it looks like Mitch McConnell and Harry Reid and the White House are cobbling something together, Kimberly. Going back to Boehner, again, the man at the center of the storm, a divided conference. He's looking at the poll numbers. He's feeling pressure, though. What do you think John Boehner does?
He's got the worst job in America right now, because he's about to get an old-fashioned Karate Kid leg sweep out from under him, because it looks like they're going to put this through. What kind of position does that leave him in? And ultimately, the Republicans, because they made, a big point about this on priority and principle, but what they thought was best for the country and what should be done. And now it looks like it's just been sort of chipped away at. So they're going to really have to get together and think about what's best, not only for the country, but how they're going to group this together, the party. And also, how they're going to spin this from a communication standpoint, so it doesn't look like they took a big hit or a loss and this was a futile effort to stir it up.
So, Greg, if this deal goes through, it looks like the good news for you and for everyone at this table is we get to talk about it in just a couple of months.
I know.
Again.
Exactly. It never ends. It's like a sequel of Nightmare on Elm Street, and you know the ending, and it keeps happening.
But it's always scary.
To quote New Kids on the Block, the Republicans have to stand tough. Because I'm sorry, the whole point of this for the Democrats is demanding an increase in debt. What is the common sense response for that? Hell no.
Right.
It's over. We're done. It doesn't matter what party is involved. They're always asking for an increase in debt. If some guy owes you a lot of money and they come back and they want more money, you have to say, screw you, we've had enough. And the media drives me nuts because they're calling for a middle ground, and their middle ground is between the left and the far left, between maniacal and homicidal. It's arguing between getting hit by one boulder and being hit by two. It's pointless. We're going down this horrible, horrible path. The Democrats want to raise taxes because they can't stop spending, and we don't stop spending. But we don't tell them to stop spending because we're fed these apocalyptic lies, these lies that the world's going to hell in a handbasket when it's not. We can spend the money. We can spend the money without actually raising it. We need long-term cuts. Sorry, I'm done.
What about that,
we shouldn't be in this
David,
position to begin with.
I know that you have Tea Party ties, and the Republicans finally are standing up for something, and I think that's what the base has really wanted. They felt that John Boehner caved last December. He conceded too much to the Democrats. They're standing firm. And so as far as the Republican Party is concerned, they're finally standing for something. Are they going to be really ticked off if Boehner caves? Will they perceive it as caving?
Every American should be ticked off if the Republicans cave. And if they do, frankly, then it's time to cull the Republican leadership of the deal makers that have been there for 20, 30, 40 years. The problem we have is what Greg said. We have a debt ceiling, which, by the way, is no ceiling. Everybody goes through it over and over. I'm sick of hearing whether Reagan did it this many times or Clinton did it or Bush did it. The problem is you can't do it anymore. You pay the interest on the debt. You don't default. You do risk a downgrade, but also Moody's, S&P, and the ratings agencies look at what you do legislatively when they issue their ratings. So we've got to think long term. And frankly, if the Republicans cave on this, we call that leadership. We get rid of the guys that have been making bad deals, because here's the real losers, the American people, and here are the worst losers in this. The Democrats claim to be for the little man, the people that are on the lower rung of the socioeconomic ladder. They are going to lose the worst of this bunch, because as the value of the dollar goes down, as purchase costs, as costs go up, and we look at this, they can't afford food. So for everybody that's looking at this, that's going, how do I get out of this? Do you want to be able to buy food at low cost? Do you want to be able to feed your families and pay for your bills?
Dave, it's 15 days to Halloween, man. Don't try to scare everybody right now. I mean, it's
reality
look,
can be scary about.
Here's what's reality. Reality is the Republican Party. You talk about the base. Most of the Republican Party in this country, represented by Republican governors, all of whom think that the Republicans in the House are crazy, want this thing over with. The base of the Republican Party is not the Tea Party.
No, hold on. I'm not talking about. No, we got. we got to get to this sound because you're talking about the base being crazy. The issue here as well, Bob, is that the president's taking a lot of heat for not negotiating. And George Will was on Fox News Sunday. He says he's an ideologue. He doesn't want to negotiate. He doesn't want a grand bargain. That's why Republicans shouldn't trust him. Take a listen.
The fact is we have a very polarizing president. I'm not criticizing him for this. He's a progressive. He exists to enlarge the power of government as an engine of the redistribution of wealth and opportunity. That's his agenda. He's not interested in a grand bargain. He's not interested in compromising. He doesn't think he needs to.
So why, Kimberly, then should Republicans?
I mean, they shouldn't. That's the point. If what you believed in from the get-go, and I take them at their word, they were well-intentioned, this wasn't political posturing, this is what they firmly believe is in the best interest of the country, then you got to hold your position, because otherwise it's meaningless in the end. You can't just say, oh, in the spirit of compromise, we've got to meet a middle ground. Not if the middle ground is bad. Not if it's bad for the country and for the economy. If it's going to hurt the lower and the middle class who's going to be shouldering this burden. This is one thing that the left can't sit there and pawn off on the rich and say, we're going to tax them and make them fix it. It's going to impact everybody.
You know something that most economists of the world don't know, that this, by us defaulting, that this going to shed
First of all,
shockwaves.
we don't have to default, Bob. If you pay the interest on the debt,
that stuff.
you don't default.
We've listened to all of it. It doesn't. You tried to fight that.
It's a
that
fact,
last week.
Bob.
It didn't work. And the fact of the matter is that you're taking a very big risk here over a very small percentage of people in this country.
So Bob, do you go off a 10-foot cliff, which is where we are now, or do you keep kicking this can down the road, the poor can,
Band phrase.
and end up going? Band phrase, and end up going off a 100-foot cliff. You can survive a 10-foot fall. You might get broken up. You go over a 100-foot cliff. You're not going to live.
That's a Tea Party cliff number.
No, Obama's driving the car and it's hurtling to the cliff.
No,
time to put the brakes on.
It is
Greg, do you
not.
think by the time 2014 rolls around, do you think that this is going to be remembered? Do you think anyone's going to be blamed for it, both parties? Or do you think they'll forget about Republicans and Democrats and be focused on Obamacare?
I think this is the first quarter of a preseason NBA game. Everybody's getting popcorn. The most important thing that the Republicans have to do is they have to stick with Obamacare. Every time there's a candidate running, you got to have somebody next to you that's been a victim of Obamacare.
Yep.
That's what you got to run against. I think this other thing will probably move away.
Well, listen, let me tell you something. My man, Teddy Cruz, who you know I'm a big Teddy Cruz supporter.
Right.
He and Sarah Palin from Willissa, or whatever it's called, we're down at the World War II Museum. I want to go down there with them next time because I want to be where history is made, and that is to have Cruz and Palin. That's the ticket for the Republicans in 2016. I think it's perfect. And, you know, it would perfect for you, Davey. Take those people. Teddy is a good candidate.
Can I point out, you were talking about the fact that they were down there at the World War II memorials where the vets marched. And to a collective snicker of the media who looked at this as wing nuts and right-wing cranks because they managed to find a Confederate flag, one Confederate flag, and they said, oh, my God, look at all these whack jobs. Meanwhile, there were no rapes. There were no defecation. There was no vandalism. It wasn't Occupy Wall Street.
Arrests.
No.
So you mean Bob wasn't there.
But they conveniently avoid the fringe on the left, and they seek like mad just one little example of the fringe on the right. And there is fringe on the right, and there's fringe on the left. But the media can't bear to look at the fringe on the left because they agree with them.
This should be your monologue for tomorrow.
All right. Before we go, be sure to check out our Facebook page at facebook.com/The5, and also our brand new website at foxnews.com/The5. You can do it during the commercial break, but coming